We are getting a warning from the past. For decades it was considered just a dormant volcano. Now scientists are finding new signs of life in Yellowstone, but there is one place in Europe that has remained off limits to scientists because of how dangerous it is. We finally got permission to go inside. What we found is horrifying. This could be the deadliest supervolcano on our planet, and it's just waiting to awaken. How long do we have left? Let's take a closer look. In the north of Italy, 350 million years ago, magma broke through the earth and created the first mountain range on the planet. They called this the Italian Dolomites. However, over time, tectonic plates shifted, and what used to be an island became part of mainland Europe. But the magma chamber did not disappear. It's still there under the surface, smoldering like a pot of soup on the stove, just waiting for something to make it boil over. The magma chamber is roughly 90 by 40 miles and it stretches 6 miles deep into the earth. That's as if you took all of Yellowstone National Park and buried it 28,000 feet underground. So what makes this magma so special? Well, to answer that question we need to go back in time. In 1783, the world watched in horror as the Loki volcano in Iceland erupted. The eruption lasted for 8 months, spewing 24 billion cubic feet of ash and pumice into the air. Hot steam clouds reached as high as 33 miles up, and when they cooled, they formed massive ash clouds that surrounded the entire island. Then the wind began to pick up these ash clouds and send them around the world. As the ash settled across Europe, crops began to die and food shortages caused starvation. More than 9,000 people lost their lives. And now get this, after the dust settled, scientists noticed that the climate started to cool down rapidly. In 1784, the summer was cooler than normal, and winters were colder than normal for the next 7 years. But that wasn't even the worst of it. Sulfur dioxide from the volcano reacted with water vapor in the atmosphere to form sulfuric acid. This acid fell to the ground in the form of deadly acid rain. The effects were so bad that scientists believe it led to a second ice age. But the reason I told you this story is because it turns out that this volcano isn't the only one capable of doing this. There are others, hidden beneath the surface of our planet, just waiting to blow. And one of them may be lurking closer to us than we realize. It all started when scientists in Italy noticed that Mount Vesuvius had been uncharacteristically quiet. Most volcanoes erupt at least once every few hundred years, but Vesuvius hadn't done so in more than 100 years. Meanwhile, scientists began to study the neighboring Mount Campi Flegrei, which had last erupted about 400 years prior. They wanted to understand why it hadn't blown yet when Vesuvius did. After all, Campi Flegrei is much larger than Vesuvius. Scientists went to the area to take some core samples from the soil, but what they found was shocking. Their drilling equipment suddenly started malfunctioning, and then smoke began to pour out of the hole they had made. When they looked inside, they saw glowing red-hot magma. They quickly pulled their equipment out of the hole before it burned or exploded. What they realized was that Campi Flegrei might not be dormant after all. Instead, it could be an active volcano hiding under the surface. But before we talk about how Campi Flegrei might erupt, let's talk about its size. Most people know Campi Flegrei as the volcano that destroyed the city of Pompeii nearly 2,000 years ago, but that's only a small part of the caldera. In fact, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Campi Flegrei is 9 miles wide and 3 miles deep. That's 4 times the size of the recent caldera that formed in Iceland. It's also 6 times larger than the famous caldera in Yellowstone National Park. If Campi Flegrei were to blow up, it would be devastating. Just imagine a repeat of the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens, but 4 times the size. Thousands of buildings would be destroyed, tens of thousands of people would be injured or worse. But unfortunately, scientists say that this is only a best-case scenario. If Campi Flegrei were to explode today, the damage would be catastrophic. It's estimated that 3 million people live within the danger zone. That's almost as many as New York City. On top of that, Naples International Airport would be destroyed along with the nearby coastal towns. But that raises another question. Why does Campi Flegrei seem to be rumbling to life now? Scientists don't really know, but they have a few theories. First, volcanic unrest often happens after a period of dormancy. In other words, when a volcano seems like it's sleeping, it can suddenly wake up and become active again. Second, Campi Flegrei is closely linked to Mount Vesuvius. Its activity affects Campi Flegrei and vice versa. Since Mount Vesuvius erupted in 1944, it's possible that Campi Flegrei has been recharging its energy and is now ready to blow. But regardless of why it's happening, scientists say it's only a matter of time until the next eruption. In fact, they estimate that the likelihood of an eruption is 50% within the next 1,000 years. But that also means there's a 50% chance it could happen in the next few decades. So, what would actually happen if it were to erupt? Well, scientists say that the first sign would be an increase in earthquakes. Campi Flegrei has been very quiet in recent years, but since 2012 there's been an increase in seismic activity. Researchers have recorded more than 100,000 small earthquakes, and they're becoming more frequent. In the past year alone, there were 500 tremors that each lasted for more than 3 minutes. Once these earthquakes become too strong, it will be a sign that the magma is rising toward the surface. But it won't stop there. Gas will also start pouring out of the cracks in the earth. These gases will smell like rotten eggs because they contain sulfur dioxide. As these gases rise, they'll cause the ground to bulge upward. Eventually the pressure will become too great and the magma will break through the surface. The most likely scenario is that the magma will come out of a pre-existing crater called the Caldera, but because Campi Flegrei is so large, the eruption column will reach as high as 33 miles into the air. It'll be visible from nearly 300 miles away. Pyroclastic flows will race down the slopes of the volcano at 400 miles per hour. Ash will cover everything in sight, and the light from the eruption will illuminate the sky like a giant fireworks. But while this will certainly be an amazing sight to behold, it will also be incredibly dangerous. People will need to evacuate the entire Bay of Naples. That's an area that includes the cities of Naples, Salerno and Capri. Unfortunately, this area is home to 6 million people. And if everyone tries to flee at once, it could lead to gridlock, panic and death. Luckily, scientists say they have a plan to mitigate the damage. They want to drill several boreholes into the magma chamber. Then they'll fill these holes with water. The idea is that this water will help stabilize the magma and lower its pressure. But there's a problem. Scientists don't know exactly where to drill these holes. Since Campi Flegrei is located near a densely populated area, they can't just drill randomly. They need to avoid areas that could be damaged during the eruption. But even if they successfully drill these holes, there's no guarantee that it'll work. It's just a theory. At the end of the day, all they can do is sit back and watch. Unfortunately, there's nothing they can do to prevent the eruption. But at least now, they have a better understanding of what's going on beneath the surface. After decades of studying dormant volcanoes, scientists finally discovered the first signs of life in Yellowstone. But what does this mean for the future of humanity? Watch this video to find out, or click this other video to see why Yellowstone's supervolcano may have already awakened.